All right, so here we are back out on the water today. We got the boys back here with the fish. Hey guys, show them what you got. Oh, little sea trout.
Yeah.
And we've been skunked every time out here recently until we brought shrimp out. So there's a little tip for if you're having trouble with everything else, bring some shrimp. Seems to work best. Anyway, that's not why we're here, but I wanted to talk about, it seems like everybody knows somebody who thinks they know everything about Florida and they want to be your advisor. So today we're going to discuss living in Fort Myers, Florida. Living here is nothing like what you've heard. We're getting after that next. All right, there's so many stories that you hear, people that want to talk about their experiences here in Florida, what their friends told them, the horror stories, the good stuff. I mean, there's a lot of different stories, but we're going to try to break that down a bit today. We'll be discussing weather, life, and there's certain things about the weather that change throughout the year. So if you think you've heard it all, just stay tuned. We're going to get in a little bit deeper on some topics that could affect your family members too. But we'll be talking about the life after the devastation we had here, how wildlife is being displaced, and some of the different wildlife that we haven't discussed yet, construction and what's going on with that right now, some of the challenges that might be going on. We have had a number of issues with mechanical things within homes too, so we're going to talk about some of the things that will help you maybe know better how to work with the inner workings of your home. But this is going to be about living here and some of the stuff that you might not have heard yet. Hey everybody, my name's Craig Cunha. I'm a real estate agent here in Southwest Florida. If you're looking for a channel to tell you a little bit more about what it's like to live, play, eat, sleep, and buy real estate on the Gulf Coast, this is the channel for you. Go ahead, subscribe, hit the little bell to make sure you're notified every time. And if you'd like to get your search started early, go to our nextfloridahome.com or our mobile app, our Next Florida Home. Get your search started there and we'll get you on your way. If you haven't heard the answers that you need in the videos, and if you're not going to hear it in this video, do what everyone else is doing. Pick up the phone, call, text, or email. I've got your back when moving to the Gulf Coast. All right, so if any of you happen to get motion sick, hopefully this video isn't going to do it for you, because we are experiencing a little bit of extra waves here. We're kind of just off of one of the main channels that takes you out to the Boca Grande Pass and up to Pelican Bay, where we did one of our other shootings. It's a sandbar that a lot of people show up to, so we're going to experience maybe a little bit of movement. I wanted to touch on weather real quick, because there's some things that are going to be happening very soon for us here, and if you haven't been around Florida in the summertime, get ready. One of the things that we have is daily storms. Literally, they pop up out of nowhere. They can last anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and they're usually gone at that point. It literally could be raining on this side of that little island, that little strip of land behind us, and on the other side be completely dry. That's just kind of how it works. But that is only one part of what you need to be considering when you're thinking about the summer months and the weather in Florida. Now, temperatures on the roads, you have to pay close attention to this if you have furry family members, because a lot of times, I saw somebody just do it the other day, walking their dog out on the asphalt. So asphalt's black, right? It's gonna draw in even more heat. And this poor little dog is prancing right behind this guy, and I don't know if he even had a clue. It was the dead of the afternoon, probably 95 degrees out. So one of the first things you need to do is put your hand on the asphalt. If it's warm to the touch, it's gonna be warm on their feet, and you could burn their pads. So please make sure that you're paying attention to that, because Florida is much different regarding temperatures than you're gonna find in many other areas of the country. The other thing you're gonna wanna consider doing, I do this, in fact, we did it today when we dropped the truck off to bring the boat out, is put our sun shield up. Otherwise, that dashboard, the steering wheel, they will be burning hot. I mean, so much so you're probably not gonna be able to drive, because it gets that warm. You know, and people do joke about wearing oven mitts to drive down here because it gets so hot. But in reality, yeah, that could be a good idea for you. Okay, on to homes and some of the options. I was speaking to Brett and Emily today, and they brought up a lot of questions that are helping me to share with you, because these are real life questions, real life concerns from people moving from other areas of the country, just don't get what Florida's like. So let's start touching on a few of their concerns. So one of the things they're looking at is their home is on the market and they hope it's going to be a quick sale, but their concern is, well, what if we need a rental until we can find a house? All right, well, rentals are Still difficult, even with all the construction, all the apartment buildings coming up, they still seem to be a bit troublesome. Prices are not yet coming down on them. And my buddy my buddy Don, he's in property management here, and he is telling me that as soon as one gets moved out, another one gets moved in. It's a large corporation that owns these homes, but they're seeing constant turnover, and that's just what the market's doing. So my answer to them about the rental, especially knowing they wanted to purchase something in a relatively short time frame. When I say relatively short, that can be a couple weeks up to a couple months. If you're talking 6 months plus, go ahead and get the annual rental. There's no reason to try and go month to month, because these month-to-month rentals can be very expensive. Depending on the type of setup you want, if you want to be on golf access, if you want a pool home, all of those are going to have premiums on them. But anyway, VRBO, Airbnb for short term, that's my recommendation. A lot of the stuff that we have in the MLS for rentals is very inaccurate, and it's tough to track because many agents will leave the listing on the MLS and just let it run, because the rentals could only be for a week, they could be for a month. So we just don't know. You have to sift through every single one of them and try to find what will work for you. Now, one of their other concerns was, well, hey, should we be looking at new construction or resales? So what does that look like for us? What's the build time? Well, build times with a volume builder that's actually has inventory or has homes that are already started, those time frames can be anywhere from a couple months to 6 months, maybe 8 months. If it's a custom builder, you're waiting 2 years. And then the next question was, well, do I need to buy land to build a home? Well, again, it depends. If it's a custom builder, it might be helpful to have the land already. If it is a volume builder, they've already got their own land. They've got dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of pieces of land, and they start the project on their land. To get it put on your own, it's a longer process. It takes time for them to turn the land into their name before they can even start the construction process, and permitting is just months long. Doesn't even matter what you're trying to do. I'm looking at possibly putting a pool on my home, and the pool builder that I talked to the other day, he told me if they can get going on it sooner than later, it's still a 10-month total build time from start to finish. So we're still going to experience shortages. We're still going to experience issues. And one of the other things we're experiencing is vendors. They're not showing up. Yeah, you can ask somebody to help you out, and to, whether it's fix a fence in my case, my fence is still down from the storm. I had numerous fence companies not show up. They told me they wanted to come bid the job and just didn't show up. Had a couple handyman out and still have not been able to nail it down. So this is the process we're going through right now. Reliability, showing up, taking deposits and actually doing the work. Those are all challenges we're experiencing here. And fraud it's happening constantly. It's happened to me. I literally was in a position where I gave a deposit for the fence, or for the roof, and my roof's still not done, and the money's gone. So I'm in the process of getting that fixed right now. Hopefully that'll happen in the next couple weeks, but be careful. It happens to everybody. And again, I know people in the business, and it's still happened to me. One other thing back on the construction, new construction, if you go with a volume builder, good chance you won't need to get a construction loan. There'll be an end loan, so they'll carry the costs up until you close. If it's a custom builder, then you're going to need a construction loan or pay cash. That's just the way they do it, and what's going to be best to get that situation done. Now, one of the things we also talked about is if you're purchasing a home here, don't just look for what's going to help you out in the short term or in the immediacy of what you're trying to do. So if you know you're going to be a snowbird at first, take into consideration if you ever went full time. So is 12 to 1,400 square feet really going to work for you if it was full time? Between needing storage space and also needing space for you to live, and if you have any animals, you have kids, you have people going to visit, all that requires space. So when you make that first purchase, make the right one so that you don't have to repeat it again. You also have to be considering location. You have to be considering some of the codes if they've been covered, the elevation of the home, so you'll know how you're affected by flood insurance. You also want to be looking at the type of construction, and what the home is made of can certainly affect resale. If you're okay with it, the buying pool on the other side might not be. Same thing with the pool. Do you want a pool? All right, well, a lot of people want a pool when they come here. Doesn't mean that you can't sell a home without one, because obviously you can add a pool, but these are all things that will go into that decision-making process for you, and they're all things you have to consider at the outset. Location of a city is another big one. Is it close to schools, shopping, things like that? So try to look beyond what you want. Even consider things such as busy roads. Even if you're okay with it, doesn't mean the resale will be. You could lose half your buying pool just on a busy street alone. Now, another big thing that they were inquiring about was, well, what about the assessments? The water and sewer assessments that come when you're on well and septic. Well, it is real. It's going to happen. Right now, I think you might remember, there's about, I'm gonna try to steady this out for you, there's about $35,000 charge for the assessments. But ironically enough, when I go look at the comps for these homes, I took the same square footage, took similar age, all these things into consideration, I can find anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 difference in the price of the homes from the Northwest to the Southwest, which is where the water and sewer is versus where well and septic is. So in the long run, it all washes out. Some people might be asking astronomical numbers like they would be in the Southwest. They might ask that in the Northwest, but it's an ask. If we look at the actual sales, the sales will show that difference, and the difference literally comes down to the price of these assessments. So don't discourage yourself from buying in the Northwest if that works for you, because that expense of the assessments is what you'd be paying in the South anyway. Another huge thing you have to consider, this happened to a client the other day, it's happened to me numerous times. When you're running the AC a lot, it's been very warm so far this year. Right through our winter time, warmer than normal, so our AC's been running more. What that means is you get a buildup of goo and algae and stuff in the condensation line that comes off the AC system. If you have your system shut off suddenly, first thing you want to do is check the float switch, make sure that there's no water in there, because it will trigger this float switch and shut down the unit. It happened to a client the other day. I went up on a ladder because her ceiling was probably about 11 feet, so I wasn't going to reach it. But when I went up to the little clean out section, and I had to put my finger in to feel what was going on in there, not only was there water, but it was so full of that goo that we had to get it out of there in order to get the system running again. Problem is that one of the copper line that runs out of this thing was over top of the float switch, and we couldn't get it removed. So in this case, we had to have somebody come out and service the unit, and that's another thing I would consider you, or I would have you consider doing. That is to get an AC service plan. Every 6 months, they'll come out, they'll clean the coils, they'll check the unit, make sure everything's running well. If something's breaking down or a part needs replaced, you can get ahead of it before it shuts the system down. But I do it every 6 months to stay on top of this, and they will also clear that line every single time they come. So once again, preventative maintenance can save you big hassles later. Now, one of the other things you're going to consider, we talked at the very beginning about some wildlife that we might not have discussed before, because when you're stepping out of your house in Florida, and I know my son does this, I find myself doing it, as the summer comes and we get all this moisture, frogs like to hang out around our sliding glass doors and around our doorways and things. And the one thing that they love to do also is when they jump, they pee. So if you're somebody that doesn't want to get peed on every time you step out the door, you almost have to look for these guys and make sure they're not there. But we have mud daubers building nests out there, which are, hornets. You'll have scorpions and obviously snakes. I caught this black racer the other day on my lanai. And then once he saw me, he scurried away up the side of the house. Possum was out the other morning. There's armadillo here, and obviously bobcat, coyotes, bears, all that stuff is here. And they're all things that, especially if you're somebody that lives out in a more remote area, pay attention to these things. If you have small animals, pay attention to these things. Gators, yes, it's the most known. It's the most probably feared outside of sharks if you're in the water. But aside from those things, there's a bunch of little buggers out here that are just terrible. We've talked about no-see-ums and them biting you. Mosquitoes live here, cockroaches. But every time you step out the door, there will be something that wildlife is going to put in front of you. And it can either be a pleasant thing, like some of the ibis that we see around here, and we have a bunch of rabbits running around this time of year as all the mating is going on for all the different species around here. But these are just some things to consider, wildlife that you're going to be living with and around. All right, so that's a little bit more about living in Fort Myers, Florida. Living here is nothing like you've heard. So there's a little bit more for you, a little bit more information to maybe help you make decisions about moving here. If you would like more information about moving to the Fort Myers, Cape Coral, or even Southwest Florida areas, check out one of these other videos. If you've got a question specifically that you need an answer to, you've got to call, text, or email, because I've got your back when moving to the Gulf Coast.